Tell me when you're ready. You can give me a signal. Yes, give thanks and welcome to this, the second installment of the centennial, commemorative centennial Black History Month lecture series. And this is the second one. We had the first one on Monday, the 9th of February, and today, the February the 12th, we are holding our second in the series. And why, for me, this is so special, and I'm sure for all of the panelists, is the centenary. This is the centenary of the founding of Black History Month. One of my favorite reads here, Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. This is the person who is responsible for the start of Black History Month. February 1926, exactly 100 years ago, Carter G. Woodson took it upon himself to have Black history celebrated in February. He chose that month. So I don't know, some people say, oh, the shortest month of the year, or whatever. Well, whatever. He chose it. He had the initiative to have a Black history inclusion in the narratives and in the curriculum and however you want to look at it. So if not for Carter G. Woodson, we would not necessarily have a Black History Month. So let's not take it for granted. In fact, I think he deserves a round of applause, spontaneously. Let's give Carter G. Woodson a round of support. Now, the book is called The Miseducation of the Negro. And realize that Negro was the term that was used for Black people at that time. If you look at the writings of Marcus Garvey himself, he used Negro. And if you notice his organization, the UNIA, is the Universal Negro Improvement Association. So that was the term that was used to describe Black people at that time. And then, with consciousness and so forth, we had Black people call themselves Black. And then furthermore, African. So there was, well, not a synthesis, but a definite evolution of thought. So that we now, for some of us, see ourselves as African, and we're happy with that label. I don't have to have a hyphen. I don't have to be an African Jamaican or an African American. Just call me African. And my thing is, when I do visit the continent, and I have gone a bit more often now in later years than in the past, I generally feel a connection, a connection with the continent. And it's all of us in here. It's our home. Consider it your homeland, all right? And I had mentioned, actually, I was talking with Muta last night. I recently went to Egypt. So some people who are familiar with Egyptian culture or whatever may have observed, this is straight from Egypt. So it's one of the mementos. And I got a few Egyptian clothes as well while I was there. Why not? Of course you're going to indulge. But it's important. Egypt was very important to me because I was looking at Asian civilization. I was looking at pyramids 5,000 years old and older. Imagine when you see these majestic monuments face to face, when you see them, it's one thing to look at a picture, but I'm telling you, when you go to the temples, the majesticness, I was blown away. And I told Muta, for me, it's a life-changing experience. So I am actually going to recommend very strongly, any of you who have not been to Egypt yet, put that down on the bucket list, try and go this year. Don't hang around, wait around. It's mind-blowing, the majesticness. And to think that we were able, African people, to have this architectural mastery thousands of years ago, that people had to come. The Greeks came and sat at the feet of the Egyptians, right? Now, people say, well, did the Egyptians master mathematics? Well, what do you think? Pythagoras' theorem is a Greek term, but Pythagoras got that knowledge from Egypt. The Greeks, and Herodotus, who is a very famous and known Greek historian, says we Greeks got all our knowledge, our general knowledge, from Egypt. He admits it. Plato, Socrates, right? They got their information from Egypt. Now, I just want to show a couple of slides and then have people come on. I'm setting a context here for my fellow presenters. And why black history? Why is it important for black people? Well, if we have no knowledge of what we have achieved in the past, how are we going to basically blossom in the future? How are we going to reach the heights of our potential if we don't know what we achieved? If we have a narrow view, a limited view of what we can achieve? Because to my knowledge, for most of us, sports and music are the only arenas in which we seem to be achieving, right? I mean, when it comes to science and technology, we're looking at Europe, or we're looking at the USA and so forth. And I've been talking the last few weeks about the state of our roads, especially here in Kingston. You know, Wellington Road is a pain in the neck for me. We can't move around freely between here and Crossroads or New Kingston because they're still working on Wellington Road 1 year later. You know, and then the roads that the Chinese work on, Richins and so forth, they do it in no time, and the roads, surprisingly, are in better shape than the ones that our native Jamaicans are working on. Until it reaches a point where the gossip now is, boy, you know, say, a Chinese, you have to get for work on the road, you know. If you want the road for work, for fixed properly, if you want the road to be repaired properly, get the Chinese on it. Now, my thing is, where is our sense of shame that we cannot manage to competently sort out potholes and repair a road? I mean, goodness gracious, if thousands of years ago we were building the pyramids, why now are we struggling to build roads? Have you thought about that? Why are we struggling with basic technology? It's really done a number on us. You know, every other race is superior. Technically, the Indians are superior scientifically. They have nuclear arsenals, they have nuclear power, and so forth. No, I don't tell many people this, but I'll tell you, I was trained in physics, not just physics, nuclear physics. And that was very, very specific, and there was deliberate. Because nuclear physics, particle physics, is, you know, it can be used for good and it can be used for harm, obviously. But it's an area in which you look at things like time dilation and so forth. You know, when you study the movement of particles traveling at the speed of light, close to the speed of light, how time changes relative to other things and so forth. You know, now Einstein came up with the theory of relativity and so forth. And we have all of the theories in physics are named after Europeans. And one of the things that astounded me is, where are the black people in terms of the various principles in physics? Why don't we have a black person whose theorem is there? So it's not too late now, but maybe if I go back into my physics, maybe I can come up with a theorem that no one else has come up with. But my whole point is, why do we limit ourselves? Why do we limit ourselves? If we build the pyramids, my thing is, well, we're limitless. Our capabilities are boundless. And so far as I'm concerned, we are essentially gods and goddesses on this planet. But we're not fulfilling that godlike potential in no way or no shape, are we? You know, we're struggling with basic things. Water, you know, roads, infrastructure. So we got a long way to go. But hopefully we'll be inspired to improve ourselves and to rise to dizzying heights in other areas other than sports and music. Because we can do it. We're capable of doing anything we want to do. All right. I'm just trying to move this cursor, and it's not moving. All right. I'm maybe I should have, well, I did bring my laptop, but I don't have the time to connect it. But I just wanted to go to the first slide. Let me check something. Mr. Palmer, what happened to the cursor? It's not moving, not responding. Could you just come here? This thing is sticking. All right, so this is your, yeah, so it's not cooperating. You know, just try it. So anyway, while we're looking at that, and I'm doing a test run with this laptop because hopefully people who have full-blown slides, it's not going to give this kind of problem. Okay, so let's try and move that. You see what's going on with that? It's sticking. All right. Yeah, I'm not seeing it myself. That's the problem. So while we deal with the technology, the other thing I wanted to add was that in actual reality, anytime I talk about space travel, and as someone trained in physics, for me, space travel is very possible, it's doable. And I'm always asked the question, do I believe mankind actually reached the moon? And how all of the coverage of Armstrong going on the moon and it's all fake and so forth and so forth. Is that better? All right, let's move it up one slide. Just move it up, yeah. Right, leave it there. And let's get rid of, why is that on screen? Why isn't it showing up there? Is it connected? So, Armstrong, did he land on the moon? Well, I don't know for sure. But what I can say is that in actual fact, it is possible to get to the moon. The mathematics prove it's possible. Once you overcome the field of gravity, you break that field, because gravity does keeping us on this planet. So anytime we travel up in a rocket, we're going against gravity, and you got to break free of the gravitational field that is keeping us on planet Earth. Once you break free of the gravitational field, you don't need thrusters or engines. Your momentum will just carry you through. That's why on some of these films you see they just switch off the engines and they're just going straight through, going up and up and up into outer space and so forth. So what I'm saying in short is that the mathematics, those people who go into mathematics, it will show that it is possible with a certain amount of thrust to break through that gravitational field. All right, let's keep it there. Thank you. So, Pharaoh-Nama, let me just put this up there because look on those phenotypical features, right? This is, one of the early dynasties of pharaohs. So we're going back at least 4,000 years. Now, I want people, you can Google Pharaoh-Nama and so forth. But now tell me if that person is not black. Does he look European? Tell me, honestly, what do people think? Let's be analytical about this. Well, he sure ain't white anyway, let's say that, okay? So far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at a black man there. So, that's up for debate for some people. But my whole point is the Egyptians were phenotyped, the early ones, the early dynasties were phenotypically black. By the time we get to Queen Cleopatra, it had Europeanized, there was a lot of race mixing at that time. And yes, the Egyptians got lighter in complexion and more European in their features. But why do you think it's so contentious, the issue of what race the ancient Egyptians are? Because it is still contentious today. if people talk about what was the race of Egyptians, you know, I could tell you, even when I was in Egypt, there was some arguments that came out. Because I was saying, these people are black. Surprise, surprise, the white Arabs are like, no, hell no, they ain't black. You know, they're white, you know. And it's a back and forth. But, you know, it's up to you to decide. But as I'm telling you, they sure aren't white. Now, what is also interesting, if you look at DNA science, there are several papers that have been written that show that the original people on the planet were from Africa, black people. So in other words, we gave birth to the rest of the human race, so that you had migrations from the continent of Africa to Asia, to Australia, and so forth. So many of the first migrations were east, to India, and so forth. So that when Indians, and some Indians are aware of this, when they go back far enough, they have that genetic marker. So they use genetic markers to see who is descended from who. All right? And there's a film called The Journey of Man, Genetic Odyssey, right? Yes. And Tejan, you were in my class a few years back. Do you remember seeing that? Tejan basically is one of my star students from about 5 years ago. But I don't know why he hasn't got his PhD yet. He's, you know, just taking it easy, yeah. Yes, Tejan, you know, you should be working on that PhD by now, yeah. But very, very, for the record, though, you were one of the outstanding students in the class. But you remember that documentary, right? Yes. So I'm recommending it, The Journey of Man, right? Genetic Odyssey. Look it up. And these are white scientists who discover that the oldest genetic markers lie in black people, people of African descent. And they trace it to the San people in Namibia, or the so-called Bush people in the Kalahari Desert region. And he argues, and it's quite interesting because he's quite humorous. He comes and he says, I'm going to meet the family. I'm going to meet my distant relatives. And then when he does meet them, of course, he's speaking English and they're clicking and he's trying to communicate, but he's like, hi, I'm your long-lost cousin. I'm happy to meet you. What about you? You know, so it's kind of humorous, but on one hand, it's serious. So using genetic markers, we can know who our ancestors were. All right? And he came up to the conclusion, white genetic scientists, that everything, all human life came from Africans in Africa. So we're the parents of the human race. But why is it that today black people are denigrated, disrespected, and treated without any kind of respect? So the parents, we the parents, are now disrespected and despised. You know, it's quite interesting, because normally you're supposed to have respect for your parents, aren't you? But we're not respected. So we're the parents of every other race on this planet. But who does respect black people today? I have to scratch my head, because I put it to you, I don't think the Chinese respect us. I don't think Indians really respect us. They may tolerate us, but what do we have to show today that's going to get their respect? Because they're ahead of us in science and technology. Chinese, most definitely, they're on ramp. When I was doing physics, the rest of the class were Chinese. So I was head and shoulders with them, you know. But I'm competitive anyway, so I'm like, okay, you're good, but I'm going to be better. You know what I mean? I like a good competition. It actually revs my engines up. But it is what it is. Anyway, so that is just a taster of the whole black history thing, because what we'll discover, and I have other slides, but I don't want to take away any time from the other speakers, is that black people essentially have founded many various inventions. So we call it black inventors. So I have a whole set of slides on that, but that's a topic in and of itself. But we don't hear about this. It's not in our curriculum. So one of the things for me as an educator is that any sociological topic that I teach, I make sure there is a at least one outstanding black personality in that curriculum, right? Because otherwise it's unhealthy for us to see only white, right? Basically white experts or white intellectuals in a particular field and not actually identify any black scholars in the field, right? Because we have to realize as human beings we can relate, or it gives us a sense of pride when we see a fellow black person achieve a certain level of achievement, right? Quite naturally. So when I went to JC, Jamaica College, and I know there's at least one Jamaica College old boy here with me, and that's Jabalani at the back. So that's one. He's got a few years on me, but nonetheless. So JC definitely in the 70s was a prestigious high school. Well, it still is, you know, truth be told. But when I think back to my days at JC, I was looking at the history books, I wasn't seeing any black faces. So I was a bit perturbed by that. But I was buoyed by the fact that my parents, both of them, my mother and my dad, were very serious about education. So despite what I was being taught at JC, I was getting an alternative curriculum from my parents. I mean, I got a book by Cronin, a biography on Garvey. That was my birthday present for my 11th birthday. And then after that, I got the autobiography of Malcolm X for my 12th birthday. So with that kind of reading, right, it's no surprise that when I did go into the social arena, my specialization in the US was black studies and African diaspora studies. And in coming to Jamaica, that's what I brought to the table, because there wasn't any African diaspora studies in our sociology curriculum. There was no sociology of race. I had to bring that on the table. I had to found those courses, because I see them as very necessary and very important in a majority black country. I don't know about my other compatriots, but that is something we have to look at our own curriculum very, very critically and say, how suitable is this for a majority black country? And I'm saying this with all seriousness. Yes, Ras Miguel, about scholars. Man, you should have brought your books, man. This man, the first black bookstore in Jamaica, Miguel Lawn. But I'm not gonna hold you up. The drums. No, we want the books, man, the books. The drums are important, but we also need the books, Miguel. All right, another time. So welcome, Ras Miguel. Ras Miguel Lawn is also one of our outstanding lawyers, legal minds. So just to wrap up, because I'm going way into the time of my fellow presenters, what I am saying is that if nothing else, we must see the importance of including black thinkers, black movers and shakers into our curriculum. It doesn't do me any good to see all white faces, European faces in my textbook, right? What's that going to do for my self-pride, my self-worth? We have to pay more attention to this, and I'm saying this in all seriousness, all right? So I've said my little bit, and that's why I think black history is important and relevant. Some people say, oh, no, this is no use at all, you know, let's scrap that, it's an African-American thing. Well, that really gets me riled up. I said, are you black? If you're black, then it's relevant to you. Okay, so my first presenter, or the first presenter, is actually a distinguished colleague of mine who has been at UWI longer than I have, and he can speak volumes to the start. I'm talking none other than Dr. Jelani Nair, who was there at the very start of the Institute of Caribbean Studies. He was there when it first germinated, so he can talk about the growth and the history of that department, and that's something to be said. That's an achievement in itself, Jelani. So he's a walking history book, so far as the Institute of Caribbean Studies is concerned, and he's also a Rastafari scholar. So headed up the Rastafari Studies Center back a few years ago. So it's one thing we share in common, because I'm also a Rastafari scholar. So, Dr. Jelani Naya, without further ado.
Yes. Yes, give thanks, give thanks. I want to greet you in the name of Kadamawe, Haile Selassie, and ITG Asfor, Menin Asfor. I want to thank the chair for his consistency in keeping this kind of agenda here at the university as well. He's correct in the conversation about the omitted curricula in Black Studies and a certain kind of race content here at the university. So I want to ask you all to give our organizer, Dr. Barnett, my colleague, a nice round of applause for, almost at times single-handedly championing this kind of important conversation. I want to ask his permission to shift and sit, because the glasses and the podium don't work well in terms of my... Also, am I being heard? Michael having put me up first, that took most of my energy just seeing that on the paper. So I don't have the luxury of hearing my esteemed panelists, Jabulani and Sister Imani. I don't see Dr. Taylor yet, but is that him? No? I assume that he's on his way. Are you hearing me? Okay, let me try the next one. I think for recording purpose, they might prefer. Yeah, this is much better. All right, so I have a few confessions. I do have some notes, which I will refer to, but I just wanted to set some context to say that when I was growing up, Valentine's was the perhaps most significant thing in February, and there was sometimes Ash Wednesday. And then by the time I got into my teens and early 20s, the attention to Bob Marley's birth started to draw a kind of different interest in that month of February. And then later, we've seen that because of ones like Dennis Brown and Bob Marley, and I suppose in alignment with spring break as well, and that kind of theme, there's been a project for Reggae Month as a kind of the whole month now. And I think it has become a big, perhaps international tourist interest, paralleling the summer kind of season as well. Now, February is a dear month to me. I think I grew up in the wake of songs like This is the Age of Aquarius, and a sense that this was an important month, not just because it was short and Valentine's, but because it had the saint of love and all these things that were attached to it. Subsequently, we hear Bob Marley as the best singer on the planet and one of the most important voices in our time. And its importance increased. Now it's dear to me also because I am born in February, 2 days before Bob Marley. And with the attention, I'd say, over the last 15 years, the month has become very crowded, in my estimation. Very, very crowded. So much to do in the month. Now, one can say that this is good. I don't know how many of you have been to the African American Museum in the United States. A huge museum full of related histories and memorabilia of African Americans. You can't do it in one day. For those who want to see archives, it creates that. For those who want to spend time and kind of relate to things, you don't feel you have enough time because this feels unending. And I want to just offer that as a context for how we treat this important month, what has become a signature month for activism on Africa, on African relations, on African teaching. And to make the confession further, that initially when the month was introduced, I used to see it as a kind of neo-imperialism. Yeah, we're already British imperialists and now we're taking up American culture. And I confess that that is an early feeling about it. As I grew to understand the importance of the conversation that was being had in reggae, in Black History Month, and how no matter where you're located, the unity around this cause and this knowledge production becomes essential. I grew to appreciate that, yeah, it becomes an important packaged moment for the society to pause and really look at the African presence, capital A, capital P, and its role to society. So having said that, I want to get my glasses. Did I leave them there? They're not. They're there? Oh, they're here. Yeah. Just to share what I have drafted as some thoughts that we might look into as we look at this subject. I've mentioned the age of Aquarius, and I think that that is an important genesis. My talk is entitled Affirmative Action and Reparation, Black History Month Revisited. I want to revisit the understanding of this month, looking at February as an important signifier, and also the age of Aquarius as similar. Now, when we think of the age of Aquarius, we think of a general shift in human consciousness from a me to a we collective understanding and responsibility. We think of spiritual awakening and enlightenment. The age coincides with the month of February. For those who are related to Rastafari consciousness, it coincides with Joseph, who is also described. It's believed to be an era where cultural transformation occurs and tremendous technological leaps also occurs. the timing as to when it starts is disputed. As you know, ages last for millennia. But many people look at the start from Wilsonian principles at the end of the First World War, with that whole collective, organizational, and political framework, to the 1960s, when we have the emergence of a kind of social agenda with Black power and that kind of thing emerging. Some interesting African American Aquarians, if you want to pull on people born in that month who are famous, would include people like Toni Morrison, Michael Jordan, Arsenio Hall, and the list goes on, I think, yeah. Amory Baraka, Sidney Poitier, Nina Simone, Chris Rock, Rihanna, Erykah Badu, Rosa Parks, the woman who would not give up her seat, Frederick Douglass, etc. Interestingly, someone like Malcolm X was assassinated in February 21st, as we approached that. Nelson Mandela was released from prison in February 1990. And generally then, the cognition around the Black History Month, in my estimation, becomes a kind of affirmative action that emerges from the African American intelligentsia, and that affirmative action becomes more important with the actual passage of affirmative action as a sense to say, no, we are not here just for tokenism. We actually have a long history of contribution. You know, Michael mentioned how, you know, where are all of our great inventors and scientists, etc. This is exactly one of the foundation pillars of the Black History Month agenda coming out of the United States, to pull attention to people who were either discredited, misrepresented, plagiarized, not given any credit, not known, in a range of important conversations, advancements, inventions, in a range of things, from domestic, you know, things like washing machine and security system, to medical innovations, to traffic innovations, a range of things, some of which we're well familiar with. So I'm suggesting, yes, my brother.
This is like 50 inventions by Black people.
There we go.
So it exists, it's real.
Yeah, man, serious thing. And that is the kind of affirmative action I'm saying, that affirmative action seemed to some to be a tokenism, where the system accommodated Africans who were not quite worthy because of issues of diversity and justice and these things, but that they really didn't belong there, that they didn't have the intellect to be there. And I'm saying that one of the important indications for me coming out of the Black History Month agenda conversation was to set that record straight quite clearly and quite early. So we move from that kind of African-American affirmative action to see global need, what I would like to connect to the same conversation, the African presence. Brother Miguel, when he entered, said he should have brought the drums. And yeah, when all of Europe and their allies are mobilizing with weapons of war. And that is the number one thing on the agenda, on the spending, increasing in compulsory military service right across Europe, a range of very militarized mobilization. Where are our preparations? I mean, we probably need to begin to take the drum seriously again, because I don't know of our type of demographics having the capacity otherwise to take on the way the world is mobilizing. I don't know if I'm clear that where are our weapons of war? And I'm talking in all of the cultural permutations that has been. And I'm not saying that we are warmongers, because we know that we are not that people. But where is our thinking? Who is doing the thinking on that? You know, Marcus Garvey asked us, where are our men of big affairs? You know, affecting whether it's Star Wars or drone wars or, you know, how much pound of this or why you went into Nigeria and looking to do more damage in the Sahel. Or, you know, where is the accountability that our people of big affairs, so to speak, help to dictate in the world? You also have, and this is after the establishment of the Black History Month agenda, a kind of crisis in blackness everywhere. I'm talking particularly about another black episode, the Ethiopian massacre, which occurs on the 19th of February in 1937. Over 30,000 Ethiopians in Addis Ababa alone killed, over 14 million livestock, 2,000 monks, 5 million households, 2,000 monasteries. In fact, and what I'm talking about is we live in a reality where all of what we know, all we are fed as news, all we are given as solutions is provided by a 15% of the world. I'm talking about European hegemony. 85% of the world is subject to those decisions, actions, etc. So when we have that kind of geopolitical setup, how do we begin to defend our people's safety and integrity in general? I'm talking about the way our populations become experimental peoples for technology, for medicine, for food, for all kinds of invention. Outside of South Africa's posturing during COVID, nowhere within the African space was there a conversation in defense of our own science and capacity to speak up for ourselves. Senegal had some attempts at various kinds of solution. South Africa has had its wrist slapped because it has dared to, say that they're war criminals that are not being justly brought to justice, you know, what is left of the maneuvering of our own conversations to represent, you know, the same kind of justice that Israel is trying to bleed out of Gaza. You know, if you think about lack of reparations for the Ethiopians in the same 1937 massacre I'm talking about, the way that our injustices kind of just move on without the conversation about reparation. I think I see, therefore, a significant highlight in this association, developing this unified affirmative action among Africans. I see His Majesty's formation of EWF in the same 1937, months after this massacre, as another major step forward in unifying the African people of big affairs. You know, if you think about it, His Majesty did not get any justice at the League of Nations in 1936. That organization comes a year after, and he's really saying, Ethiopian world, federate. And this is what is important in order for you to receive your justice in the world. His Majesty does a number of things that help us. In fact, the same genocide I mentioned, the Graziani massacre in 1936, when His Majesty goes to the League of Nations to represent that atrocity, the Amharic he uses at the time to describe the extinguishing of an entire stock of people helped to set the precedent for what would, by the end of the Second World War, become the Genocide Convention. And genocide as a word comes into the international legal and vernacular to describe what starts in Ethiopia when the Italians dropped mustard gas and were really trying to rub out the Ethiopian people. So I'm saying then that in a real way, Black History Month becomes a kind of media advocacy amplification moment. My work with individuals such as Plano is very cold in this room. I don't know if it's me alone, you know. But my work with individuals such, is there a possibility to turn off a vent or something? Yeah. Plano, the same Italian massacre that I'm telling you about, individuals like Plano would draw this on billboards and banners. And in a way, I would argue that the sidewalk university, the trench town, open yard experience was our version of our Black History Month, but it wasn't a month. It was a consistent space that would subsequently lead to the development of things like reggae. Plano as a major influential elder in creating the kind of environment that was able to nurture ideas that built the kind of conscious reggae that subsequently came from individuals such as Bob Marley and the Wailers and Alton Ellis and others, Ethiopians, Abyssinians, etc. And in a real sense then, and this is the resource difference, this is the cultural difference. In a real sense, the African American population, better resourced, were quicker to develop a music industry to give that independent voice. This comes decades after that Black History Month initiative. And it's arguable, by the time that music voice develops, it's not the same kind of content that we would subsequently put in our reggae. But, that's arguable. I'm suggesting perhaps based on the kind of population we have, reggae became that Black History Month schoolroom, that teaching platform, that parade of our worth, our history, our society, our struggle, love, oppression, etc. Become a total kind of classroom, a sociology, for want of a better word, assist in providing nurture, guideline, philosophy for those present. In a way, the parallel between our project and what's happening in America is that we're talking about expressions of Black power, what is facilitated in a mostly white country, and what is facilitated in a mostly Black country with the black skin, white mask, ruling class phenomenon, which is what reggae comes to encounter. Even though the population Black, the rulership and the institutions are not Black, weren't intended for you, this is the work of liberation now to bring consciousness inside that. In a sense, the 60s and 70s were really positive and progressive. It is in that period that we have things like Kwanzaa developing, and I see Kwanzaa as another one of those affirmative actions, again, out of the United States, that some of us felt it might have been a little neo-colonial, that it gone to another colonizer. But if you look into the intention, developed as an African-centered spirituality at that time of year, to give us something more credible for our own celebration and involvement. And it has increasingly grown in our own space among those people who understand that kind of purpose. What happens at the end of the 70s and the start of the 80s is the increasing rhetoric of the micronational sort of xenophobic Willie Lynch syndrome. This is when we go into the age of ultra-conservatism, post-Reaganomics, window of vulnerability, and all of these things that more or less what Planner describes as deprogram the Back to Africa movement and movements like that. We don't see that kind of, those 2 decades between 1960 and the end of 1970, where you could actually see organic groundwork from various quarters in dealing with what might be described as post-traumatic syndrome, coming to terms with their own invisibility. Am I talking too long? 2 minutes, okay. So I'm saying that deprogramming has been a significant legacy that we now have to manage, which is how to reprogram a sense of African unity that looks at the whole bag of tools that is provided across the African world. That's really our task. The African Americans, we Caribbean people often get in that very Willie Lynch divisive thinking that they're different from us and we're more hardworking and more intellectual, a range of things. For me, one of the great indications of this was how Ivan Van Sertima's work, They Came Before Columbus, was treated by Anglophonic British Caribbean scholars as, cannot be substantiated. You know, how could he know all of this? And variously, because it's not a European scholar telling them that this is okay, almost refusing to accept that kind of scholarship as an important part of our legacy. I think I've said most of what I wanted to share, and I'm therefore saying that I think we gathered here thinking through strategies and experience and history could look at African Black History Month as an important moment, what Plano would call to call down Africa on them. You know, Africa is largely unrepresented, ignored. The context of who are still demeaned African Jamaicans is still underrepresented. And in this regard, you know, and the social media of today makes this even more so enduring beyond African Black History Month. The knowledge that we gather through the efforts to frame our contribution and our presence and to break the silence around that presence becomes invaluable teaching, inspiration, which we cannot overlook or not support. So with these few words, I give thanks, and I trust we will have more conversation as we open up at the end. Give thanks for the moment.
Yes, thanks, Jelani. All right, so it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, which, and for those of you at the program, would realize it's none other than Dr. Imani Tafari. And Dr. Imani Tafari is not just well knowledgeable gender expert. She's a very polished sociologist, I would say, and also has the distinction of writing 2 authored books. One of them basically looking at the social entanglement of Jamaica, the basic disruption that exists, social disruption in the inner cities. And do you have that? Did I give you the introduction sheet, Imani? No. Okay. All right. Well, that's all right. So basically, though she's a well-known journalist as well, she has a regular column in the Gleaner newspaper. Every 2 weeks, you can find that column speaking to topical issues that occur in our daily lives, social issues, critical perspectives on the social dilemmas that we face as a nation. Beyond that, she also has the distinction of basically 2 times the 2 awards you won, Imani. I've actually lost track of my my notes, so you'll have to excuse me. I don't know what I did with that. I think, but anyway, Dr. Imani Tafari is a well-renowned scholar, activist as well, very importantly. So she's not just a scholar, she's an activist in her own right, and also an expert in gender studies as well. So in talking about the gender dynamics within the sociological framework, Imani is very versed in that. Overall, somebody I've known for more than 20 years, more like 3 decades now, I think. And Imani has impressed me as irrepressible, courageous scholar activist. So without any further ado, let's give it up for Dr. Imani Tafari.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. And let me see if I can find the other slot here. And greetings, everyone. Thanks for being here and being part of the commemoration of Black History Month. Let me see if I can find my folder. Here we go, Michael. And here we go. But is it connected? Slideshow from the beginning. Okay, there we go. So it is 100 years since Dr. Carter G. Woodson inaugurated this remembrance. And my question is at the beginning, which we'll return to at the end, what would you have been doing to commemorate this, if Dr. Michael hadn't organized the seminar today? Would you have, on your own initiative, been doing something to rouse the rabble, stimulate people, remember how, just to have you reflect on that? Because we all have a personal responsibility. It wasn't just something that Dr. Carter G. Woodson did, but something that we should also have a responsibility about acknowledging. And being invited to come here today caused me to remember that, Marcus Garvey was the contemporary of Carter G. Woodson. They were rubbing shoulders. They were rubbing shoulders with Anna Julia Haywood Cooper, the Amy Jakes and Amy Ashwood Garveys, many people who have become famous. And so I also want to invoke Marcus Garvey, who says, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And to use that as the springboard for talking about decoloniality, because that was what Woodson was about, trying to provoke people to recognize the ways in which colonialism had messed us up mentally, socially, physically, and otherwise. Pardon? All kind of alley, all down at the alley, then we're gone. So we want to understand, this is the agenda that I want to set today, what coloniality means in respect of Woodson, and some of the key concepts that he talked about in the book that Michael mentioned, The Miseducation of the Negro. Because I decided to download the book and have the computer read it to me, and I heard it in another kind of way by listening to it. And to think that 100 years ago, he could have been talking about decolonizing education when, I don't know, maybe people who are still teaching here at the university can tell me if, since I'm no longer teaching here, they have introduced an intentional approach to decolonizing education, because the University of the West Indies, you might know, has 3 campuses, and all 3 were old slave plantations. And what I find remarkable is that I was teaching a class once, Michael, and I asked the students, so what do you think about the monument that you see as you enter the university, coming up the Queen's Way? They said, what monument? What monument is? They don't know that there's a monument with the names of the men and the women who were on this plantation at 1834 when emancipation was declared. And it's a well-kept secret, even to the students here, that it was an old plantation. And that level of erasure of our history is pretty remarkable. So we need to talk about how we can even apply Woodson's approach in this time. And to see if we can internalize the resistance ethos that he would have introduced then into our thinking now, and to relate to what he was about. And this is something that he said that I want to quote directly. He says, if you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. And I might also add what she will do. If you make a man feel feel that he's inferior, you don't have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you can make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back door. He will go without being told. And if there's no back door, he will demand one by his very nature. So you can understand that when we talk about the endemic violence that we have in this place, and the endemic self-hate that we see when people are bleaching their skins or straightening their hair or wearing long everlasting braids just to want to be white, because we have to name the elephant in the room, because it is trumpeting, then we get a sense that we are creating the back doors for ourselves to walk through. And then when we see what has been recast in our current situation, where black history is being erased, it said Black African American Museum is under threat right now, because with the return of Confederate flags and monuments, you know that that is the next step to reinstate the white supremacist upper hand. So what do we mean by a decolonial advocacy? We want to make sure that the past that is very elusive, that we can scarcely touch because it's so much of a thing that people feel ashamed about, feel guilty to assert, feel as if they are being the bad person if they talk too much about it. We need to recognize that there's a fusion of our past in our present, and if we don't take steps to safeguard that kind of knowledge, then we will not have that in the future. So miseducation is something that is hydra-headed. It comes in many forms, and you see it in the classroom, you see it on the media, you see it in terms of the popular culture, and so on. And we have to be intentional about our engagement with who we are and how we represent ourselves. So Carter taught us that even though we might come from humble beginnings, we can supersede them. And these are some of his stellar achievements. He not only founded Black History Month, but he also, as a Black historian and a researcher, was prolific in his writings. He was also very passionate about making sure that the academic space was animated by this reflection of self-consciousness. And to think that he was operating in an era of segregation, Jim Crow, and so on, it wasn't as if he was in a comfortable time and a comfortable space. He was cutting against the grain and making sure that we have a button, but what are we doing with the race is the question. Are we really trying to win it? So when we talk about educational inequality, in a place like Jamaica, for example, if you want your child to go to the best high school, you have to have a deeper pocket than many other people. Because I remember when my daughter was young, I went to MonaPrep, and I said, you know, I want to enroll her here. And I was told that you would have had to come when you were pregnant to register her. And I was like, but I wasn't pregnant. I have an adoptive parent. So it means that that didn't apply to me, you know? And also, when you think about the cost, so once upon a time I thought, well, I'm going to make her go to St. Peter and Paul because, you know, it's the nicest school on the block. And she was actually exposed to things like chess and robotics and so on. But then I was at an economic low at the time, and the rent was competing with the school fee. And I thought to myself, but if I'm relatively privileged in the society because I have tertiary education and this and that, I had a job and so on, and I couldn't afford it, you could imagine the average person wouldn't even think that that would be an option for them. So we have a very racialized, class-specific, and stratified education system. You get what you pay for, or what you cannot afford, right? So Woodson's notion then that education was a space for empowerment is relative, because if you can't afford it, then you can't have it. And then again, he also went a layer deeper to say, well, even in the classroom, you have to understand that you're cutting against a lot of grains, because as somebody who taught at Shortwood for 7 years, I know that the teachers who go in the classroom are not necessarily the most conscious of them all. You have people who resist the very students that they are teaching, because I remember the course I was teaching was called Dancehall, Sex, and Religious Ideology, because it was a way of provoking the teachers to think about how these intersecting variables manifest in the lives of the children that you're teaching. How do you relate to children who come from inner city communities, for example? And there's like, they wouldn't want to engage with that because it's cutting against their religious background, because for me to bring them to Passa Passa, for them to see how sex is displayed in the public space, it was cutting against their notion of piety and so on. I'm like, but you're rubbing shoulders with people who are what you object to. How is it that you're going to teach? And I was amazed that years later, my daughter had one of those students as her religious education teacher, with a whole other story. But it shows you that we're not far from prejudice in terms of how even these projections operate in children's lives. And so we cannot pretend to be apolitical when we are when we are engaging with students in the classroom, for example, because you have to have a standpoint in order to make your point that much more poignant. So miseducation in this context shows that you can lose your way even as you're trying to pursue higher education or even medium and lower levels. Woods identified education as a primary technology which the colonial powers used to brainwash us. So the notion of a white God, you go to church and sing, so wash me that I can be whiter than snow, so that the religion that you might pick might also reinforce that miseducation. The cultural space that you might also occupy, because you might then get the layer of the God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, where's the woman in all of that kind of reinforcement that makes you also alienated from your own self-identity. So we have to be the ones to then question whether we are actually reproducing the very mechanisms of oppression in the ways in which we remember, in the ways in which we teach our own children to be who they are, to make certain choices, and how do we relate to the fact that we might have received these marginalized points of view, but we have the objective of being architects of transformation. So from a decolonial perspective, we have to also realize that when we deny our own history, we are complicit with our own oppression. When we refuse to even be on Michael's organizing committee to make sure that this can be a bigger event, then we are, let us say, complicit, yes, complicit with the Eurocentric values that would want that to be the status quo, and that we are afraid unjustifiably so, of crossing the rubric of white power. You know, how do we challenge white power? Is that the rumor that is going around now that Jamaica refused to help Cuba with the oil? Whether the government is denying it, but let us say if it not go so, it nearly go so. Because we have been capitulating to the dominant Monroe Doctrine or Donroe Doctrine in the region. And that is a dangerous precedent that we are setting in terms of not being able to acknowledge Caribbean sovereignty, Jamaican sovereignty, helping out our neighbors because we are very indebted to the Cubans and to Haiti, incidentally, which is now surrounded by 3 warships. And if it wasn't for Haiti, let us just say at this moment, we wouldn't even have a platform on which to talk about human rights. So to capitulate to the Marco Rubios and that kind of prejudice that they're fostering within our hemisphere at the moment is to undermine our own existence. So I would want to know, challenge us to be part of the critical thinking mass, or the mass of critical thinking that would push back, if we should have that kind of courage, to ensure that the dominant forces don't entirely erode our possibility for surviving what I think is a current holocaust of unjust power, and a decolonial analysis would then encourage us to say, all right, we need to even learn Spanish and French and Dutch at this 11th hour because we are more umbilically tied to our former colonial or even current colonial masters because we still haven't achieved sovereignty when we have a king as the head of state, a king representing a Britain that would still want to possess us with our own, yes, to use the word of the day, complicity. So what do we want? Ultimately, well, Jelani talked about it. We need reparatory justice. And again, there's a shroud of shame surrounding that kind of demand because when people talk about, oh, slavery is past, for whom is it past? Because for us, it has an enduring legacy. We see it in the debt that we still have to service. We see it in the unmitigated harm that people who are exposed to hurricanes will have to contend with, because when we look at our topography, it was definitely substantially damaged because of the colonial hand in our ecology, and we need redress, and we need to not be ashamed about demanding it. And here we are, 100 years after Woodson, still bungling our way through how do we even articulate that demand? How do we have a space of solidarity to make sure that we don't all go down the drain? So here we are. Yes, we can talk about UE as a space that you are privileged, Michael, to be able to mobilize the forces right now, but maybe not for much longer. And you still have to find a way to make UE not just be a passive recipient of this history and perpetuator of the injustice of not being critical enough about it. But when you can be still driving up a Queensway, it shows you that we still haven't even questioned the environment which we are subscribing to here at the University of the West Indies. So I'm going to leave it there. It's a longer presentation, but in the interest of time.
Can you put your bullet points on these key concepts?
Yes, we'll, you know, I think that, you know, at what, 8 o'clock? Exactly. So I will just escape and wrap it at that point.
So, now I want to introduce someone I've known for several years now. Actually, I was just reminiscing because I met this brother more than 30 years ago, and it doesn't seem that long to me. But the fact is, we're all getting older and time is moving. So yes, it has been more than 30 years that I have known Jabulani Tafari, who I am speaking to. And one interesting coincidence is we went to the same school, Jamaica College, so we're both JC old boys, but Jabulani has a few years on me, not to make too much of a point about it, but several years. So while I was a youngster in the mid-70s, a young teenager, Jabu was a full-grown man and done a whole heap at that time. So the brief bio on Jabulani Tafari, who has flown here from South Florida, especially for this occasion, as we commemorate the 100th anniversary of Black History Month. Jabulani Tafari is a multimedia journalist. He's a graphic artist and managing editor of the Roots, Reggae and Culture magazine. And I should have a couple copies with me. Hold on one second. Maybe I left them in the office. But this is a magazine that is very, very informative. It's powerful reading, and you'll get to see it very soon. Anyway, Ras Jabulani is also the author of the self-published book, A Rastafarian View of Marcus Messiah Garvey. And that's a must-read. I'm telling you, very powerful read on Marcus Garvey through a Rastafari lens. Further, he has edited and he's done the graphic layout for a number of other books, including Imani Tafari Ama's Blood, Bullets and Bodies. So Dr. Imani Tafari Ama, she didn't make mention of that profound book that she released. The Blood, Bullets and Bodies is available at the bookstore right now, as a matter of fact. And the Philosophy of Opinions of the High Priest by Priest Dougie Smith. So Jabulani edited that as well. Jabulani Tafari has the distinction of being the first dreadlocked Rastafari ever to work in the politically volatile newsroom at the former Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation, otherwise known as JBC, in Kingston, Jamaica. He was also the first Rastaman in Jamaican television history to appear on camera as a TV news reporter. Jabulani Tafari's cultural approach to multimedia communications has earned him many accolades and awards over the years. He received the Ranny Williams Prize for Cultural Interest in 1981, becoming the first Rastafari journalist ever to win a Press Association of Jamaica National Award. Yes, yes, clap him, man, clap him, definitely. And due to his outstanding use of the broadcast and print media to promote reggae music in Jamaica during the early 1980s, Jabulani Tafari was named Reggae Journalist of the Year in 1984 by Rockers Magazine. Jabulani Tafari was the producer, director of the award-winning 1985 documentary Inside South Africa. Yes, yes, powerful, powerful. And Jabu, hopefully, we'll get to see that in the near future. I mean, it was made decades ago, but still has some currency today. Inside South Africa, documentary of South Africa in the 1980s. Must see by ones and ones. Maybe we have to do a tour, a film tour with it. So additionally, just to wrap up, so he was the award-winning director for Inside South Africa, the first documentary with a reggae music soundtrack. Can you imagine that? The first. So hopefully we'll get to see it in this calendar year. I probably have to use some tactics to get Jabu to do that, but we'll see. Tafari was also selected by the Broward County Library and Broward Community College for the 2005 Culture Keepers Award for his contributions to the South Florida community. In the meantime, Rasai Jabulani is the vice president of the Roots Foundation, Inc., which staged an annual Marcus Garvey birthday celebration in Florida for a 20-year period from 2004 to 2024. And I think that deserves a clap, if nothing else, because that's hard work. I know it, man. That's hard work. 20 years straight. He's currently working on the next volumes of Rastafari in the 21st Century, a book he co-wrote with priest Dougie Smith. Volume 1, as a tribute to the Rastafari elders, was published in 2023, and it's a pity you never bought any copies, Jabu, of that book. But that's a great read, right? A tribute to the Rastafari elders. So the next time Jabu has the occasion to visit Jamaica, I am going to make it a point that he carries a suitcase full of books. All right, so without further ado, let's welcome Jabulani Tafari to the stage. Yes, give thanks.
Good evening, people. That's not the real introduction, but I'm just speaking meanwhile I take out these jump drives, and yeah, I'm gonna just pull it out. Hold on, wait. That's one, this is two. Mike, this is yours?
Yes,
No, not that one. This is everything? Yeah. There we go. No, I want the top one. So, kings and queens, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, all greetings. Yeah, so here we are for Black History Month 2026. Hello? Okay, that's not the one anyway. I did. Punch it up. Well, I will just start in the meantime, because, so Black History Month. Well, Black history. Black history really means African history. So when they say Black History Month, they mean African History Month. I like to call it African awareness. Started in 1926 by Carter G. Woodson. It was the second week of February. And then in 1972, it became Black History Month. Today, I like to say it's Black History 365, African Awareness 365, because we are African and black on who we are 365 days a year. Hello? don't play. Don't play. So here goes the presentation note. Reclaiming a stolen legacy. And what's the stolen legacy? It's like intellectual property rights and all such stuff. They stole our minds, our culture. Marcus Garvey said, a people without the knowledge of their history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And everyone knows anything without roots does what? Withers and dies. So when African people get disconnected from their roots, from their African roots, we wither and die. And Black History Month is one of the efforts to reclaim our stolen, lost minds. So, play.
Yeah. Do you want me to play?
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
It's playing.
No, it's not.
It is. It's playing. 17, 18, 19. It's playing. So you want to pull it to where it starts?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So you, if you want to choose it by the slides, you go to the PowerPoint instead of the video.
Well,
So
I'm going to have to do it that way.
so you want to go by the slides and the slides.
This was automated that should have displayed by itself, but it doesn't want to go that way.
And you just skip to here, to the full screen one.
This here?
This one. Yes. And then you just advance by the slides. So next.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay, here we go, rolling. So now, some people think that Black History Month is just for African Americans, but Black history, African history, Black people are all over the world. So African history, Black History Month is for Black people everywhere. In Jamaica, Queen Nanny of the Maroons, she created Black history in Jamaica. Sam Sharp, Paul Bogle, they created Black history in Jamaica. Marcus Garvey, he created Black history in Jamaica and around the world. So no one can tell me, oh, I got to advance it, that Jamaica has nothing to do with Black history, because it surely does. Now, the new thing is Reggae Month, and in my opinion, reggae music is Black history music. Come on, there's no other genre of music in the world that talks about the affairs of Black people, our suffering, our future, like reggae music. So reggae music is Black history music. So there's no competition between Black History Month and Reggae Month. They should be playing all of the conscious, I'm not talking about bashment music now, conscious traditional message music that went around the world and everybody loved it and wanted to come to Jamaica to see where, if they didn't even understand it, some of them, the power of it reached around the world. So for Reggae Month, let's not have an either or, they're complementary, not oppositional. Use the conscious reggae music to tell the story of the African Black people And not just in February, we emphasize it there, but we play the music all year long. We should be talking about black consciousness, African awareness all year long, just the same. So, Black History Month, again, is not just for black people, because a lot of Chinese, Indian, every kind of people, they followed the white people in looking down on us black people. But why? Because they don't know our history. The history of the whole world is based on African intellectual property. The roots of world civilization started in Africa. So people who think they are superior to us and we are inferior to them don't know our history, or they would know better. So the whole world, not just black people, needs to know African history, because African history is the basis of their history. So without starting at the beginning, you won't follow the course going through. Now, why do we need Black History Month? Because from they brought us here, they got some kind of meme with the Obamas, monkey heads on people. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. This is where it started. They said black people came out of darkest Africa, and that Africa had nothing good. Nothing good comes out of Africa. That's what they always used to say. So they characterized us in comic books and in cartoons derogatorily, to make us look bad, to make us think that we were less than human, lazy, shiftless, don't want to work. We are coons. We are cannibals, because when I was growing up, we saw a lot of these things with big pots and white people in the pots, and we're boiling them to eat them, because that's what Africans do. That guy says they aren't going to like the taste of this soup because he's peeing his pants in the soup. That's why he says that. And that's supposed to be a joke, because you see all of those Africans can't wait to boil them to eat them. They had minstrel shows, black and white minstrel shows, the red lips, the black face, and acting like kunamunus, and all meant to show how stupid and inferior we were. These were the cartoons and the propaganda being put out by the mass media. The 1600s, 1700s, these we're looking at now are the 1800s when you see this kind of stuff happening. So black people were supposed to be good nigger slaves, happily eating watermelon. That's all we do, eat watermelon, and we're happy. Put black people in a melon patch, you got them covered. To counteract all of that now, this brother here now you see, John B. Russworm, a Jamaican, because in African-American, black American history, people from Jamaica and all over the Caribbean always traveled and were part of the black freedom struggle in Jamaica. Not just Marcus Garvey alone. He's the most famous Caribbean person that black Americans recognize. But there's a whole bunch of them otherwise. Malcolm X people came from the Caribbean, as just one example. So John B. Russworm, this is 200 years ago, 100 years before the start of black history, black people started to push back on the propaganda. So John B. Russworm, along with an American called Samuel Cornish, started the first black newspaper in the United States in 1826 called Freedom's Journal. And it was fighting for equality, and it was a voice for the voiceless to put our opinion and our history out there in the space, in the media space. So this is 100 years before Russworm, before Carter G. Woodson, thank you. So we've been trying to push back intellectually and otherwise for a long time, not just now. Now, after Russworm, in the rest of the 1800s, of course, after the Civil War, came the Ku Klux Klan, trying to take back the emancipation that followed the Civil War. And in 1915, The Birth of a Nation, the first blockbuster movie in American history. You hear about blockbuster movies? This was a silent film, just a musical score and no talking. But you can see what's happening because the Klan are saving some poor white ladies who are being threatened by some black people who were really white people dressed up in blackface with red lips, pretending to be black. And they're running after the white girls, and the brave knights of the Ku Klux Klan are saving them like knights in shining armor. We know it, Birth of a Nation. Go home and Google it. And of course, during that time also, there were a massive amount of lynchings. It's not just in cowboy shows, rustlers, and horse thieves that they hang up. They carried that practice unto us. And I mean, man, woman, and child got lynched. And if you're not careful, it's still going on today. So this was the environment that brought about now Carter G. Woodson now, 100 years after Freedom's Journal, where in the 1920s, when Marcus Garvey was the king of Harlem, and Harlem was the black capital of the world, right now Garvey had a whole bunch of historians amongst him, Carter G. Woodson being one of them. And you know the book, The Miseducation of a Negro. Well, this was the time when the Harlem Renaissance, a lot of literary works, poetry, theater, you name it. It was happening at the time. Harlem was kicking and bubbling. So, along with Carter G. Woodson, another contemporary, a favorite of mine, Joel A. Rogers. I didn't know until maybe years, I was in my 20s before I knew he was a Jamaican, born in Negril. And his writings at one time were required reading for the UNIA members back in the 1920s, because he went around the world, studied our history, and put it out there to combat the lies that were being told at the time about us. Now, the first book I saw in high school that blew my mind, because I knew nothing about black history at the time, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, a little pamphlet, came in a lot of different covers over the years because it's been out there, so it's still out there, and it had the history of achievements of black people from all over the world. And this man here, J.A. Rogers, he's authored many books. This is just a sample of them you're seeing right here. He was in Ethiopia in 1930 for the coronation of the emperor. He received a medal from him at the time. And he's the one who wrote in World's Great Men of Color, Volume 2, because there's 2 volumes of World's Great Men of Color. He said that His Majesty was like the pictured image of the Christ in his whole appearance and his demeanor and all of these things. Joel A. Rogers, Augustus Rogers, is the one who said that. Read any of his books. Though they should be required reading now also in all history classes. Now, as I said, these brothers were all around. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the king of Harlem. And Garvey himself, too, was a black historian who wanted us to rediscover the greatness of our ancestors. Because when we know what we have done, we know what we can do. History, my people, isn't only about yesterday. History is today, too. And history can be tomorrow. If you are brave enough and conscientious enough to do the work, that people don't intimidate you and make you afraid to go do what needs to be done, then your name can be in history too. Marcus Garvey wasn't braver than anyone else, so to speak, but he was. But what he did, any of us can do. What Amy Jakes Garvey and Amy Ashwood Garvey do, any sister can do too. So think about it. We're talking about black history, not for Jeopardy and School Challenge and Trivial Pursuit. We need this knowledge to empower ourselves. It's Black empowerment, Black history, and African Awareness Month. It's about Black empowerment. What can we do to inspire each other and our people to rise from the ashes, to reclaim our position? Right now, Africa is not even on the United Nations Security Council. Come on. Why not? Because we're disrespected and not seen as powerful or important enough to be there. So until we can regain some real power, economic power is the most important, because you have to fund stuff and pay for stuff. So with good economic power comes now political power, and the power now to change your social conditions and to have your spirituality work for you. Note the word I use, spirituality, not religion, because African spirituality was turned into religion as a weapon to use against the people. So these were some of the things that Marcus Garvey was teaching them back there, and he directed the people to look to Ethiopia and to look to Africa. African minds must never be separated from African roots. Otherwise, we lose our identity, sense of purpose, and knowledge of who we are. So we have to keep that connection in our minds, in our hearts, and that bird you see there, that's the Sankofa bird, the African emblem, meaning returning, going to the past to chart our way forward. If we don't know where we're coming from, we don't know where we are. And if we don't know where we are, we have no idea which way to go to get to where we need to go. So to have a proper route lined up, you know you're coming from, and you know where you are, so you can say, no, we should go this way to get there, or go that way to go there. But you have to know your history, because without your history, you're like a tree without roots. You don't know what the heck is going on. So that's ABC. So Marcus Garvey was all about reconnecting African minds with their African roots. And for all intents and purposes, they say African roots begins in East Africa, by the equator. And over the course of thousands of years, civilization moved up the African east coast until it came to Ethiopia, which was called Kush in the old days. And Kush is the father of the Nubians. Nubia being down in what they call today Sudan. So civilization came up from the rift valleys, all those lakes and rivers in East Africa, till it reached a height in Kush up in Ethiopia. Then it went down the Blue Nile into Sudan, which became a Nubian empire. There's almost more pyramids in Sudan, more than in Egypt. They're not as famous, but there are more of them, because the whole region had pyramids and temples and all of that kind of stuff. So civilization, remember, came down the Nile to Egypt, not up the Nile from the outside world, as people would like to tell you. Because they're going to tell you that space aliens, we'll soon see the pyramids. They're going to tell you that space aliens or white people built the pyramids. Oh, no, no, no. So Dr. James published this book, another must-read book again, Stolen Legacy, which outlines how the Greeks led the stolen, the stealing of our intellectual property. Dr. Mikey alluded to it earlier. Pythagoras' theorem, when Pythagoras came to Egypt, the pyramids had been there for thousands of years. They didn't know geometry and the formulas. Sure they did. Because by the time stuff got to Egypt, it wasn't, as they love to say now, the dawn of civilization. That's what they call it. That civilization started in Egypt. Not really. My research now has shown me that by the time civilization got to Egypt, it had been in existence for thousands of years before. So the Egyptians weren't novices learning mathematics and learning science and learning architecture. They had perfected it. which is why the pyramids on a north, south, east, west basis, they are perfectly aligned with the stars in the sky. They are perfectly aligned. The dimensions in different measurements of the pyramid are all mathematical formulations. So these people weren't learning this stuff. This wasn't scientific theory. The pyramids are the proof that they knew how to actualize and manifest their knowledge. And they did it with a degree of perfection which modern technology still can't comprehend how they did it. You know one of those stories? So civilization dawned on the plains of Giza. No, civilization was perfected by the people of Kemet. Kemet is the name the people called their own place. Egypt is a European name for us. Cush, Kemet. Cush, the father, Kemet, the daughter. The daughter became world famous because these pyramids were put there. But now, Professor Mikey was just there. These pyramids at the time were the tallest building in the world, the biggest buildings by terms of volume. And what we see today, remember, these are the ruins of the pyramids. People have been grave robbing and stealing stuff and trying to pilfer stone from these pyramids for thousands of years. We've all seen the thing, life after humans, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and the buildings are falling down and grass is growing all over, and in 100 years the building is gone. So these people built these buildings, and 5,000 years later, after being vandalized and robbed in the desert with harsh climatic conditions, they're still there. The pyramids were the first wonder of the ancient world. There were 7 wonders of the world architecturally. The pyramids were the first, and they're the only ones still with us. This is an artistic rendition of what they might have looked like at the time, covered in limestone with a gold tip at the top. The gold tip was stolen whenever the limestone was all ripped off. And like I said, they've been chipping away at these 20-ton, 30-ton blocks of stone raised up 400 feet in the air. How? Modern science still doesn't know. So I am telling you, remember, this was built without cement, without mortar. They just placed them. And they haven't fallen down after 5,000 years. So these people, as architects and as scientists, knew how to do their thing because their thing has durability like none other. And these ruins of the pyramids show us that. Oh, I can do it like that. Now, the Sphinx. We talked about Napoleon, the French, coming into Egypt and seeing these images with the broad noses, which showed the origin of the people who created them. They turned the cannon on the Sphinx and blew off the nose, which is why the Sphinx looks like how it looks today. But no, the Sphinx is even older than the pyramids. If the pyramids are 5,000 years old, right now the Sphinx is anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000 years old, built out of harder material than the pyramids themselves. So whatever technology they used to carve this thing, like I say, they knew some science. These weren't amateurs. This is a picture of the pyramids with Cairo in the background because they're pretty near to Cairo, down at the mouth of the Nile after civilization came down. How many cataracts from Ethiopia, down, 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 down. The upper kingdom, which was the earlier one of the Kushites, and then the lower kingdom, which is down nearer to the Mediterranean and the mouth of the Nile. This is Cairo, right there we're seeing. So now, up the Nile, the temple, here, there are more temples in Egypt, Kemet, than probably anywhere in the world. And again, the scale, the size, you talk about, oh, you have a 10-foot ceiling or a 12-foot ceiling, or these might be 20-foot ceilings up here. The ceilings you're going to see now were like hundreds of feet up. The size and scale of their engineering defies modern comprehension. Here, we got tourists flocking to the Avenue of the Rams. These are all some of the temples in the temple installations in Kemet. And here you see these columns. There's no roof. I don't know where the roof went, but there's no roof. But these places were previously covered. See that little person there and how big those columns are? How did they erect them without, what do they call them? Without cranes and all of this stuff. They carved them, erected them, had them straight. What technology were they using? These weren't simple people. These weren't primitive people. Space aliens didn't do this. Europeans didn't do this. People, if we did this then, I'm sure we can do more today. It's up to you who are all listening. So these temples, I think Professor Mikey got to see some of these temples too. Now, again, the stolen legacy. They have taken our symbols and our signs. Oh, that's what it did? Okay. It should have showed you some of the Luxor imitations of these images, because in Las Vegas, they got a sphinx, and they got a pyramid, and they got some other symbols that are really Egyptian symbols, and they put them up as if they were their own. There go the Las Vegas pyramid, which is a copy of these Karnak temple obelisks, or Queen Hatshepsut, one of the great queens of Egypt, her obelisk. And they copied them, and they brought them all over Europe and put them in their capital cities. In Washington, D.C., everybody knows the Washington Monument. Where do you think they got the idea and the design? Go back. Hold on. Oh, what are you doing here? Okay. So on the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., and all over Washington, D.C., you'll see symbols and signs, if you can recognize them, that show you that they got their layout plan from some people in dark, distant, dark Africa, they called it. But how dark are we? They say imitation is the best form of flattery. You call us dumb and dark, but everything we did, you tried to do and claim that you authored it and originated it. What kind of... Usually when people steal your identity, they do it one person at a time. This was a nationwide, race-wide stealing of our identity. They stole the identity of a people, not just a person. And up to now, we haven't reclaimed our identity. Black History Month is supposed to give us the ammunition to know what happened so that we can reclaim what is legally, lawfully, historically ours, if we only knew. Because we have stamped advanced cultures all over Africa. MonaMedia down in southern Africa, the University of Timbuktu, and it used to tell people, go to Timbuktu, because it's like the end of the earth, the farthest place away. But if you go to Timbuktu, you can find the University of Sankore, with one of the greatest libraries at the time. So we have been in the forefront of civilization and culture all along until hundreds of years later now, leaving from Egypt, coming up closer now, when they brought us enslaved. We weren't enslaved, but they enslaved us and brought us. In the first place, they brought slaves from actually Iberia, which was Spain. The Moors from North Africa captured Spain in about 700 AD, built a lot of castles, and they were into science and astronomy and medicine, and that whole scientific and intellectual uprising that led Spain and Portugal to start the exploration of the world. It was the black people from North Africa who laid the foundation for that. And when Ferdinand and Isabella, you remember them? When they sent out Christopher Columbus, the Italian explorer, they started now to have a war with the Moors. You hear about Blackamoor. When you hear Moor, it means black. Blackamoor, Moors. They had a war with the Moors to win Portugal and Spain in what was then Iberia. And the white Christian nations of Aragon, it was what? Aragon, and what was the other one? Isabella, it was Castile, I believe, and Aragon were the principalities who achieved dominance. And when they captured some of the Moors, they were the first African black people shipped off to the Caribbean, right here to Haiti and the what became the Dominican Republic. But now in modern times, you know, they took us away. Every time I hear the crack of a whip, my blood runs cold. I remember on the slave ships how they brutalized our very soul. And today they say we are free. No, we're still shackled and chained in all kinds of poverty. Now, Willie Lynch, a plantation owner from Barbados, where are you going, was sailing down the James River in America, and he saw slaves hanging on trees because they love to hang us. And he says, what a waste of an investment. There has to be a better way of handling these people rather than just destroying them, because you're destroying your investment. We paid good money for every little black nigger slave and little black nigger slave girl, you see. We had to pay good money, and you're going to just hang them the first thing they do? There has to be a better way. And his better way was what they call now Willie Lynchism. Find everything that can divide them. Tall from short, fat from thin, black from little brown, who live down there, from who live up here. And so it has been up to now. We have perpetuated this Willie Lynchism ourselves now. That is the tribalism and self-hate and colorism that too often thrives amongst our communities. But this is centuries of ingrained propaganda has resulted in this kind of thing. You know, go research Willie Lynch too and what he did. He did an awful thing to our mentality and our brain. And Black History Month, African Awareness Month again, is an effort to counteract that Willie Lynchism. So in Haiti, they had a revolution, and Haiti became the first free black republic in the Western Hemisphere. When France was under Napoleon, the great general, and these little black folks in Haiti defeated the great French army, drove them out of Haiti, and they assumed control, and they were really afraid that maybe France comes back. So this you're looking at now is called La Citadelle. To me, it's the eighth wonder of the world, because the masonry of this thing here is just overwhelming. And this was built by African black people, not by anybody else. And this is on a mountaintop, like how Newcastle is up on a hill, and it can see out to sea, and it would take you days coming overland to get to them. This place is the same. At the bottom of that hill we just saw is this palace of Sanssouci, which was a whole garrison at the bottom. You'd have to beat them at the bottom of this hill at the Sanssouci Palace, destroyed in an earthquake in the late 1800s. But it's a wondrous architectural place, as you can see. And after you beat them at the bottom of this hill, then you got to go up the hill. This is before there were helicopters and aeroplanes, so you got to do it by foot. And who has the higher ground has the advantage. So they built it up on this hill that they could see out to sea if the French were coming. And if there was any kind of warfare, you got to beat us off from the top of this mountain in this fortress. This fortress is like 200 years old now almost. And it had cannons all around. Those are cannons you see there with the cannonballs. It was virtually impregnable. It wasn't tested, but just by looking at it and the location and the fortification, we know they would have been hard-pressed to take that place. And this is the legacy of us as stonemasons and architects and all of that kind of stuff. We had all of these inventors who, like I showed the back of my shirt, we invented a whole bunch of things in America. and have got scant credit for it. But unless we do the research into our own greatness, they will never tell us how great we are. You have to discover that for yourself. So African Awareness Month, Black History Month, is a time to remember all of this stuff and bring it to the front and try to reprogram our minds and reconnect our African minds with our African roots for African empowerment. Because when you don't know who you are and where you came from and what you did, you have no idea of your own potential and what you can accomplish in the future. And again, remember, we're talking about Black history today and Black history tomorrow, which is all dependent on us here now. So if we don't do something serious today or tomorrow, what? No Black history? Going to talk about 2025 and 2026? Nothing happened? If nothing happened, it's because you all did nothing. Or I did nothing. You know, we all didn't do anything worthy of note to be written in a book or recorded in a documentary. These brothers that we have seen, just a few, because this is not even 1% of what we could talk about for African awareness and Black history. But these people did enough that they have been recorded, that we, 100, 200, 300 years later, can remember them and refer to them. You know, Latimer there, they gave Edison the credits for the telephone and electricity. Latimer did most of the work, but did they ever get any credit? Benjamin Banneker designed the Farmer's Almanac that a lot of us used to use as farmers, even here in Jamaica. Is Banneker started from when was he designed Washington, D.C.? You hear about the real McCoy? McCoy made a pump for the steam engines to keep them lubricated and moving. When they used the imitations, they broke down. So people said, hey, we want the real McCoy, the one made by Elijah McCoy, the black man. So people, there's a lot to our history and culture, and if you don't dig it up, they're never going to tell you. And I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Jabo. Yeah, man. So, by default, you were the keynote speaker, so to speak. So, before we go into the question and answer session, we're going to have some musical treat courtesy of Sampaloo. So, I hope you have the track lined up, you know. Yeah, let's give it up. Sampaloo. Yeah. You're better off using the portable mics.
Yes, greetings. Before I go in anything musical, I want to say I am really impressed for what these gentlemen have put together. The only disappointment for me is to not seeing this room filled with people. You know what I mean? Say again? Well, to me it is. You know what I mean? Because we want the moment to be recognized by everyone. You know what I mean? So as much as we can put this thing out in terms of what Mr. Bennett has done, we want it to be, for the next year, it's supposed to be very successful. We need to see this room filled with people.
Very quickly, you say you can take a horse to the water, but you cannot force the horse to drink. So a lot of people who did know about it chose to do something else or another activity they thought to be of more interest. That's just the reality, you know. But having said that, those people who took the time out to come, yes, we appreciate that. And I'm sure that they got some information of use from at least one of the presentations. So the reality is it's a choice that people make, you know, of their own fruition, volition. So it's one of those realities. But anyway, what people don't get to catch in real time, that's why also we have it recorded. Maybe down the road they will discover the record and say, wow, this is a gem. You know, why wasn't I there? What happened? You never know. But anyway, Sampalo, at your time now, you're going to give us something special. I know that. So at your time.
Thank you. Anyone that trucks. Unjustified. Yeah, you know, so many things are happening in this world today. Where is the justice? Welcome up, Ollie. Black history. If there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. If the cost of living is out of the poor man's reach, oh, if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. Why don't you all practice what you preach, bro? All lives matter and we know that we've been unfairly treated cause we're black. But what we seek is equal rights and justice. So now is the time for change. We need things to rearrange. We demand the simple right to coexist. So if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. Why don't you all practice what you preach? Oh, if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. If the cost of living is out of the poor man's reach, oh, invade our land, it took our freedom and enslave us. Made it a point of your duty to degrade us. For what was in the dark has surely come to light. So, but now we've seen the efforts of some conscientious people, and good will always overcome evil. I know there'll be changes since black and whites have joined to fight. So now is the time for us to see changes, and this is the time for things to rearrange. Now is the time for us to see changes, cause black lives matter. So if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. Why don't you all practice what you preach? Oh, if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. If the cost of living is out of the poor man's reach, oh, yeah, you know, remember, there's just one LIF for each and every individual in this universe. We all bleed the same blood, and we all shed the same tears. So to love each other, let's raise our fears, you know what I mean? Because all lives matter. Whoa, so practice what you preach. Whoa, if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. Why don't you all practice what you preach? Oh, if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. The cost of living is out of the poor man's reach. Oh, if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. Why don't you all practice what you preach? Oh, if there's no justice, then there'll be no peace. If the cost of living is out of the poor man's reach, oh, yeah, Rastafari. Let's get the next track very quick, the family. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Lauren. That's all. Yes. I want to dedicate this song to one of the greatest leaders in the world today, Ibrahim Traore. And so, all Africans, home and abroad, lift your voices and sing. It's better to be alone than in the wrong company. Hats off to you, Ibrahim Traore. Yeah.
It's better to be alone.
Mina.
In the wrong company. I salute you, Ibrahim Traore.
Many a great men came, but you are greater. You are the leader the people did wait for. No Africa has found its new liberator, ordained by the Most High, the Creator.
Homage to Sankara,
A son of the sun,
he was a freedom fighter.
yeah, oh,
He was
a
a
liberator.
liberator.
Yeah, oh,
He was a freedom fighter.
it's better to be alone than in the wrong company. Hats off to you, Ibrahim Traore.
It's better to be alone
Than in the wrong company. I salute you, Ibrahim Traore. Well, Africa is the land of the burnt faces. Peace and love, we no harbor hatred. Center of the earth, it is so sacred.
Center of the earth, it is so safe.
So let's rise. For so long we've been denied. Unite. For your land, it is the prize. Prize. Oh, it's better to be alone than in the wrong company. Hats off to you, Ibrahim Traore. Yeah. It's better to be alone than in the wrong company. I salute you, Ibrahim Traore. Yes, calling all the ancestors, those that came before us. Kuma and Kwame, Patrice Lumumba, Sylvanus Olympia, Muammar Gaddafi, Nelson Mandela, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and all freedom fighters. Rastafari. Africa, rise. It's your time to shine. So that's it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Let's give him one another clap. Another round of applause. Stampaloo. Yeah, man. Great vibes. Great vibration. So I'm going to ask the panelists them for just seat themselves up here at the head table. And we do a short question and answer. and then we are going to wrap up, you know. But I want to give thanks for the record for those who took the time out to turn up. There are a lot of competing events, as we had mentioned before. You have Wiki Wacky Festival, you have a whole heap of things going on, Jamaica being Jamaica. So you didn't have to be here. Of your own volition, you came here, and we appreciate love that. So yeah, man, while you sort out the order of where you're going to sit and everything like that, just to let you know that the second installment of the Black History Month Centennial Series has been brought to you largely by the Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work on a shoestring budget. So it is what it is, but we still wanted to broach this issue of black history. Because no matter what people say, I'm going to put it out there that we as a people, as African people, we need to know our history. We really need to rise to the greatness that we once had. Because my perspective is we have fallen from that level of greatness when we were the rulers of this planet, when we created the basis of civilization for other races to follow. So now we become the followers. We're following what the Chinese are doing. We're trying to, India comes up with an invention. We're following them. No, we should be the progenitors. We should be the architects, right? We got to get back in the driving seat. That's what I'm saying in short. All right. So, any order? Well, I'm going to check people's hands and try and see what the order is. We only have about 10 minutes or so to play with, so it's got to be quick and snappy. All right. So, first question.
And here I was thinking I was loud enough. But I caught a piece of Jelani's presentation on IARD at the beginning, where there was a reference to Reggae Month and how busy the month is. I'm curious because both you and Jelani, Dr. Barnett and Dr. Naya, are a part of the Reparations Council. I'm very curious about your own education agenda as part of the Reparations Council when it comes to black history and the reparation agenda, and how the opportunities, given the noise of Reggae Month, I think Reggae Month has gone global and it has drawn, it's an amplifier now. How do you use that? How do you incorporate that? And how do you take black history conversations beyond this month that is already noisy?
Well, good question. I'll let the panelists, but what I would say briefly is I essentially teach black history in the classroom, right? Because I do an African diaspora studies class and sociology and race, and deliberately so, because that's here, right here at UA, right? Because I see it as important, and I founded those courses so that I could teach it. It's not just no accidental, because I am passionate about that. So let the record know that. So anyway, let me let my compatriots say something.
Yeah, give thanks. I can't answer that question quickly because I know we're here because of Black History Month, but I think a part of our decolonization process has not adequately looked at history itself. even the conversation among I and I, his story versus I story, I think is critical for what is a methodology and an approach to writing history and thinking of what history represents. So I'm not averse to affirming our heritage and the range of important advances we need to be able to stand on a foundation that can take us forward. But I'm very critical of what we, and just to quickly say, you know, we were doing Caribbean history for years, but still not decolonizing the mind of Caribbean history students. The idea of sugar and slavery and a certain kind of representation of our relation to the happening in the world, the events of the world, how we are positioned as slaves and rebels and, you know, without ideology, you know, frivolous and being blown by the whim and fancy of the people whose archives we represent or we use for this history. So I'm saying there's a project where history is overrated as a discipline. And I'm talking about as a colonial discipline. I'm not talking about as a value. And that has to be a part of the project as well. So the short answer is, a part of what I do when I teach is what I just described, which is try to represent a heritage that is constructive and doesn't necessarily underscore the points of, you know, they say when lion has his own storyteller, the story of lion hunt will go differently. And I think that our project of self-representation needs to be more critical of that history and more constructive. We have had those kinds of systems in the past. That's what the griot and all of those people represent in our tradition. Thanks.
You know, I think that beyond the efforts that you make as a lecturer, Jelani, or what Michael does as a lecturer, is the structural, the institutional architecture of the colonial. Because if you even look back at that notion of why is the Queen's Way still called the Queen's Way, you hear a whole bunch of stories as to the history that brought it into place and how it is difficult to dismantle this history because of how entangled the university is with that representation. And there's no political will, I think, to address that because you have a vice chancellor who is called Sir, who you can't leave the Sir out of his name, so that even the notion of being so wedded to the notion of the British. I mean, what was his name again, who just passed a couple years ago? He was on BBC. He got offered an OBE, and he refused it. What was his name, Miguel? A poet, the dub poet from Benjamin Zephaniah. Benjamin Zephaniah said to the Queen, you can go and stop your OBE until you realize the reparatory justice demands that we're talking about. I'm not interested. And so the investment in the structural things of Britain is what we're talking about. The Queen died and the Prime Minister went off to go mourn and declared 2 weeks of mourning just the other day. And you found that lawyers changed their postscript from QC to KC. So the notion of decolonization has to do with self-identity, it has to do with the political economy, it has to do with the structural makings of government and what we see as our societal architecture. And so when we come down to the classroom, it should not be a question of Michael going on sabbatical and I'm replacing him. And structures would have preferred to cancel the courses in the time rather than elongating them, to just explain to you how hard it is for Michael Barnett to be teaching black studies here on this campus. And it is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, because you become the troublemaker. You become the troublemaker for asking the critical question. And it's deep. It's very, very deep. Why is it that the police force still has the emblem of the British crown on their buttons? Why was Barbados able to become a republic like overnight? And we are here talking about constitutional reform, talking about the many mechanisms that there are for delaying a process like that. So emancipation from mental slavery is a critical thing, but it's not a thing that will happen, yes, easily because of the investment that people have in this.
Well, I wanted to say just before you responded, though, Ras Jabulani, you mentioned Barbados twice. They got rid of the Queen, but the irony of the Vice Chancellor's knighthood is that it's a Barbadian award, not from England. So the Bayesian state has retained the colonial structure of honors, but his honor is Bayesian, as opposed to a knighthood from the Queen. Yeah, that's the distinction. And we would think that he would be much more critical, given his role. Yeah. So that's just a point of information. They were quick to get rid of the Queen, but they have kept the rank and file honors of that in order to give their own nationals honor. Yeah, yeah.
That is even more investment. Yes, okay.
Give thanks. I think, like charity, decolonization also starts at home. The intervention. For example, my children are born in New York. My grandchildren and great-grands are born in Atlanta. Yet still they go to the same basic school that I went to 70 years ago. Because everything a child needs to know in life, they learn it in the first 7 years. Everything else adds on to that. It's interesting that I'm here now, and it's Reggae Month also. So last night, we did Rubber Dub in the Garden, 100 years of Black history, with female intervention. So last night it's only the females that were on the mic, giving the history of why we are the matriarchs. I left there at 4 a.m. and at 6 a.m. I was at Lallis Gray Early Childhood Institution to set up for the Black History Month program. And I'm pleased to report that Brother Camus, who is taking over while you take your sabbatical, Dr. Jelani, was there with Dr. Ashantiwa Ngidi, the founder of Africology Institute. And what are we doing? We have to also train the teachers, because I brought paper, construction paper, and gave to the school. And I let them know that on Friday, the students must make cards for Saturday the 14th to give to their parent and their mother. But the card must have the heart. They must give them the training that that heart is our Adinkra symbol from Ghana. That is the heart of love. And that when them hit on TikTok and say them like, It's not like them liking, but it's love them loving. And that the Akoma card that they're going to make on Friday to give their parents on Saturday should say, "Be my Akoma." Because we must have a generation that is not going to say, "Be my Valentine." Because how Valentine can get our Adinkra symbol and we paying and buying it to give to each other. So on Saturday, the 14th, we'll have the 3rd annual Akoma Frederick Douglass Day in Akoma Village Judgment Yard, because we rebranded Judgment Yard. And when we have that is going to be the lesson. Is 12 to 7 for the youths. It's fun and facts. So I have to be the intervention, not only the institutions. For these words, I give thanks. Blessed love.
All right. Yes, thanks, Queen Mother Moses. So, well, we kind of reached that stage where it's wrap-up time. As I tell people, and some don't believe me, we actually have a curfew period here at UE. It's not well advertised, but 9 o'clock is that edgy time. That's when we release our students from the night classes, and the evening programs are advised to stop at 9. So it is what it is. But I hope, all said and done, that people got something of value, some information, some insights, and something. You have an announcement? It's a comment. All right.
And it's because of the artist. I actually enjoyed the performance, but when he said something about the audience, I find it very interesting that we measure success by the numbers in the room. And I just feel moved to say that rather than await an applause for things like this, if we could not leave on an applause, but just on a mission to do something further. Because I find in Reggae Month and Black History Month, most times I go to something, it's the same people you see, the ones who are already perhaps not in need of this kind of education. So what do we do to advance the agenda beyond UE, beyond the university classroom? And so if you're going to take something from this session, your second one, where do we go with it? So I think perhaps what we can consciously say, this is our agenda, this is our education agenda, but the how that we get to the young people that you want to get to.
Yes, very, very good point, and I know Jelani has something to say on that one. But what I would say is that for me, curriculum change is necessary, in that we have to revisit the curriculum. There are not enough black heroes and sheroes mentioned in the textbooks that we use. And this impacts our psyche, because if I don't read about some great, some great task, or, something that has been achievement by a black hero or shero, then my perspective is limited. It's actually clouded in a way that I don't see my fellow black people as accomplishing anything. So we have to look at that, because when we look at even our national heroes, let me tell you something as an educator here at UE. Our students have next to no knowledge of our national heroes. They can list them. Huh?
So we've been too conditioned, like Paul of Dogs, the apparent conditioning. How are we going to break that through the culture?
All right. Well, one of the things, I think it's with the teachers as well. The teacher training, so institution like MICO and our teacher training colleges, How are they training the teachers? Do the teachers have a critical mindset? This is the issue. Because let me tell you, and changing the curriculum is no easy feat. It's not a 1, 2, 3. I changed the curriculum of our sociological theory class by adding Marcus Garvey as a social theorist. I got a lot of backlash for that, right? It was a back and forth. We had a staff meeting, and as it goes, I managed to get most of the votes, but it wasn't a straightforward thing. Because some of my colleagues said, wow, what are you doing adding Marcus Garvey to that sociological theory thing? And in fact, one person went as far to say I was bastardizing the course, right? So this is here in Jamaica. So what I would say is don't take anything for granted, because sometimes the biggest resistance is in your own backyard. All right? This is just the reality. This is the landscape that we operate within. Right? Yeah. All right. Okay. I'll just, yeah, what are you saying, Brother Joseph? So all right, let me give you the mic. I know everyone's trying to speak at once, but let's give it a little structure. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Greetings. Yeah, I was just saying, it has been promised by successful leaders to introduce the philosophy of Marcus Garvey in schools. Up to now, it has materialized. So you see, we're in an odd place. Oh, yes. I was saying that it has been promised by successful leaders that the philosophy of Marcus Garvey would be brought in the schools, but up to now, it has materialized. So right now, we are in a very bad spot.
Yes, Brother Joseph, good point. That's a work in progress. So, as I said, you just don't take anything for granted, because we just seem to think everything is a 1, 2, 3. It's not necessarily like that, all right? We have to be discerning about these things. So we have, yes, my brother, you have a question.
Say it very quick. Say it very
Yes.
quickly. What Colin Douglas has said to you a while ago. Me can prove, like, I just go outside a while ago. Just do something on my phone, and I was passing a student. She was like, what's going on? I must tell her. She was like, she know about it, but she never remember. So for you, it's better marketing. So you need in a TikTok a flow. Like you post it today on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook today. You post it tomorrow. You post it like around the clock, right around the clock. So like you remember, you keep forcing it in the people's brain. So they always remember. So even that young lady who passed a while ago and tell me she see it, but she never remember, then she would remember. And more people that remember. So you keep forcing promotion in people. As an artist, I do it. I don't sleep at night time, so that's why you call it PR.
Well, that's you.
Yeah.
That's you, my brother. But the truth is I actually need some sleep. And I realize that by default. Because, no. So I am not going down that path. Effective marketing is important. But unfortunately, it's like you have to drop in, something spicy. For my students, it's extra credit, right? That's the first thing that comes to mind. I said, it'd be useful for you to attend this event. Oh, sir, gonna get extra credit? Boom. In some cases, it depends on the mood I'm in, but in some cases, I said, no, you're not gonna extra credit. If you're not interested of going of your own volition, then forget it. You're not self-motivated, forget it. Because we've got to be careful. It's like you're training a pet or whatever. Every time he does something good, you give him a little, biscuit or whatever. So then you train it, it gets in a routine. No, we got to get the students to a level of their own volition. They want to take part in this sort of, this discussion or whatever, this academic meeting, whatever you want to call it. But if they don't, of their own volition, that is just a reward, and stuff kind of thing going on. That's not ideal, not on a long-term level. Because what happened to self-learning? What happens to sovereign learning, I should say? That's not going to happen. Because their thing is, I'm not going to read because I'm not getting an immediate reward for it. So what's the name of that experiment with the dogs? Huh? Pavlov, yeah. Is that the road you want us to go down? Not me. So be careful. And then the whole thing with TikTok, that's another conversation. So, oh yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you very much. My name is Gilly Priest. I would just like to acknowledge that in this room, I would like to just acknowledge in this room that we have the president of the Marcus Garvey. Stand up, my virgin, let them see you. We are bringing the ghetto uptown, you know. Sometimes that we need to shake it up. Right? And Antoine Campbell, stand up, my virgin, right? And the legal advisor, Miguel Lone. I'm Gilly Priest. And I'd just like to know that they bring it out to the attention of the people here that the Marcus Garvey party is on the move right now. And we are looking for supporters, and we are looking for people to come in and contribute them skills and them intellect, mentally and physically. So part of Black History Month is about getting up and doing. Right? We have to live it. And that is where we are about. Our intention is to bring it come on the campus here, so too. Because if you notice, when you go worldwide, everything has to get shake up on campus. Because this is where the young, vibrant mind is, where it's believe that them is invincible, and we need to take advantage of that invincibility type of thinking. Because these walls that you see here is walls, so walls that walls the mind. And that is what we need for bring. Because I support the Marcus Garvey party. We are on the move for the next general election. Believe it or don't believe it. But we are here and we are here to stay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, please. All right, we give thanks. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. I was hoping for some food to come through, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Like I said, too many competing events, you know, Wiki Wacky Festival and so forth. So it's going to draw people as it is. But thank you for taking the time out to come out and listen to some Black History presentations, because there's so many other things you could do with your time. This is a reality on a Thursday evening. Thank you, Sampaloo, for your performance. When is the album coming out, Sampaloo? It's out. It's out. So what's the name, what's the title of the album? All what? All right, so I've been told, although I wasn't directly, and I have to consult, Mr. Palmer, can we get 4 more minutes? I'm told there's another person who wants to perform, although I wasn't personally consulted, but what is Mr. Palmer is the head cook and bottle washer in terms of when we have to shut down. We can fit it in. All right, so somebody will have to introduce this artist because he hasn't spoken to me. So I don't even know who this artist is. Jelani, did you get to finish what you're saying? Yeah. But okay, so please.
Just quickly.
Yeah, please. You have to be sensitive.
I thought that the action was an important charge for us. I was listening to the news 2 nights ago, and the reader of the national newscast, when faced with a name that looked African, declared that she would not even attempt. She declared on air she would not attempt to pronounce it. I'm going to try and pronounce it. Arnold Swansky. I think that's the name I remember. But what I'm saying is that we have been journalist who is looking global on issues concerning Africa. And this can't be Jamaica. I mean, a place that is supposed to be a tremendous inspiration for African everywhere. So I think, you know, we, university individuals, we have to make what Plan would say Africa our everyday. You know, it can't be the 28-day month. It has to be realistically, in some shape or form, every day. And there are various ways with kind of social media. We have football league in Africa is now Friday. Africa Cup was done in January. There are a range of things that we can use to begin to engage a wider demographic about what is the future of mankind. You know, things like that.
I just want to, acknowledge Carl Ola, who is here from the Jamaican German Association. He's very interested in what we do here, but he's also very active in Germany, representing our interests. So respect.
Yes, greetings once again. I want to introduce one of our newest talent, Maga Jamal.
Greetings, everyone. That's Jalan. Yes, I'm soon to be a graduate of UE from the Institute of Caribbean Studies, pursuing a degree in Music and Performance Studies. So this song is dedicated to the endurance and strength of Black people. Strong melanin.
So like a man's life, the biggest victims abuse and trafficking. You don't come on, acts like sardines and things in it. You can hardly be. You understand this, cause of the bravery. And going in with pigment of our skills. We go hero them way, like we human races. The people strong and wicked. Strong and oh, you're blessed with it. You power in your soul. God made you pure and strong through these days. Strong melanin. Oh, you're blessed with it. You power in your soul and God made you pure and strong through these days. Black woman, so much I will lie. From a little baby to a grown lady. The masters in the skills are in the kitchen. You want to confess the water smoking, want some shady business. Some black boy, this is not with the cut. You shoot back into back to front and just the strength and people break. You try to escape, you are a captive of the race. They leave the tear, beat it here, take your feet in the place. You're stronger in numbers, you're sharper than dollars. Bring back the culture, like a remarine soldier. They think we are joke, and silence we with a rope. They must think we are goat. Oh, you're blessed with it. Powers in the soul and always, but made it pure and strong through these days. Strong melanin. Oh, you're blessed with it. Powers in the soul and always, but made it pure and strong through these days. Them not feel it, give it with them fabricate and soften up the culture like the pattern where we take the place. We get hard that back with the ancestors. Your sacrifice not going vain. Phenomenon of black make the stand up strong like we pigment in the sun. 1834, 1838, 1865. That's where you and I began our life. We started making our own choices every day. Betterment of life. We started taking our own space. you don't fight it. For we protest against some progress. Unite my people, unite. True powers in your soul and always. God made you pure and strong through these days. Strong melanin. Oh, you're blessed with it. True powers in your soul and always. God made you pure and strong through these days. Strong melanin. Thank you.
All right. Yes, yes, nice vibration, nice vibration. Good way to seal up this second installment of Black History Month lecture series. So give thanks for the turning up and everybody who made the effort to come. And, you know, if you want to speak to any of the speakers, feel free. But give thanks as we celebrate the centennial. Just remind you, this is 100 years since Carter G. Woodson. See how the time passed? Since he founded this, Black History Month. So, and he did it for a reason, and that reason still applies so far as I'm concerned. So give thanks for the turning up, because I know, as I said, there's a whole heap of other things going on, so we give thanks.